You're listening to another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Hey, everybody. We got a special show today. We're going to be talking to some parents of autistic children. Most of y'all know Lisa Boultinghouse from the Center of ASD, and she brought a couple friends with her. Y'all want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, my name is Angela Payne, and my son, Tucker, is 19 years old, and he attends the center for their daytime adult reach program.
And my name's Felicia, and my son is Declan, and he is 10, and he attends the center for their daytime Excel program.
You're going to hear from them mostly about what it's like being a parent of an autistic child more than hearing me ask a bunch of dumb questions because, people... this has been a real experience for a lot of people, more and more common these days. You know, most of y'all know, I was a teacher, and they started moving autistic children into the mainstream, and so I became more exposed to the spectrum. And it takes so many different manifestations of it that it was hard to keep track of, frankly, for a layman like myself. But we're going to let y'all do most of the talking about what's going on, how, not so much about the center itself, even though y'all talk about it all you want. I'm just saying you're going to talk about, the daily things, about being a parent, also the emotional strain that it is. I mean, I have to imagine some days are tougher than others, and so there you are. There's, by the way, ladies, there's...
Hi, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
A friend of yours, Christopher Gonzalez, has absolutely loved the Center for ASD. It is one of the most respected organizations in town. I've heard so many people talk about it, even those that aren't parents of autistic children.
Yeah.
They just think it's fantastic that we have that kind of opportunity here in Burleson. I'm going to run over the sponsors real quick because they make all this possible. In fact, one of the sponsors will have a personal note in this, Shandy, as I'll get to in a minute. But thank you, ladies, over at CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. Hope you're doing well. There are all sorts of plans. Go check out the website on 317, or let's try CrossFitBurleson.com, but they're located at 317 Southwest Wilshire. They were on about a couple of months ago, and they got all these plans and ideas that they want to share with y'all. Also, thank you to Shandy. And we'll be talking, or Shandy sent me a message, I guess is a better way to put it. She has an autistic son herself.
I love Shandy.
Yeah, and I told her about this show, and she was very, very excited because...
I should have had Shandy come on.
We have talked about it before. She's been on the show several times, not only when she was running for school board, but also since she does real estate, which is why she sponsors the show. She comes and talks about interest rates and real estate, and I'm going to have her on, and we can fit it into her schedule because she is pretty busy these days. But
and with Re-Inspire, too.
Re-Inspire. Yeah, she does keep a full day. And I know her son, Griffin, and he's been in my home more than once, and, he's a very pleasant and personable young man. And so she was going to just talk about that as well. Also, thank you to Our Place, Auto at Our Place. I'm sure y'all been there before.
I love our place.
We do.
That's Declan's favorite place.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you get the pancakes or whatever?
Always. He loves their bacon. He will eat about half a pound.
I'm not going to, knock any restaurant in Burleson, but I think Our Place is just a step above most, if not all.
We love it.
Because it's just it's not just, the food is really good, but the service and the atmosphere and whatnot. I mean, we're fortunate we have a lot of good restaurants, but I think Our Place really is special. And I'm very proud to have them as a sponsor. Also, Wild Cigar and Culture, they over at the Standard. I don't know if you ladies have cigar smokers in your life, but it's a good place to get gift cards for those if you do. Also, they have a nice bar, a very nice bar. It's probably the best bar in Burleson, to be frank. And they have a place to meet. They have all sorts of... they have like a special room.
You can go smoke a cigar and sip some whiskey.
I can do the whiskey.
Yeah, they have a very nice bar. This isn't the bottom shelf stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Because when Chris Notaboon, the owner, get started, said, look, we can get all the rot gut we can get somewhere else. We want something decent, So he has a good selection. So thank you, Chris, over at Cigar and Culture. Also, thank you to Tiffany Nico. The magazine should be out this week. She's almost always out the first week. I don't remember it not being out the first week of the month. Local Life magazine goes to 30,000 homes. It goes to a lot of businesses. And it's a really, really good place to advertise your business. So check out Local Life magazine or locallifetx.com to get a hold of Tiffany. Also, Southern Jim.
Gala.
She's supposed to be coming back today, but she's been on vacation. But my wife works there, and I
Does she?
Is that with the earrings?
Yes. The ones on my ears?
Yes, those, okay.
she's worked there since September or early October.
I've probably seen her. I don't even
I'm
know.
sure she works every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, some Thursdays, some Saturdays. They're closed on Mondays. I was there for the first time last week. I just happened to be, I was doing a little customer sponsor care at Wild, and I said, well, it's just right across the parking lot. My wife is there. I walked in, and it's a very nice store. And you can take your husbands or
You should buy
significant
her some
others.
things.
Yeah, you're not
So
the first one to say
shiny.
that. Yeah. Yeah, well, we have to pay bills, too. You know? But what was nice is they got, if you got your husband, boyfriend, significant others, whatever you got, you could put them in this little bullpen area, and they can sit there and have a beer or a glass of whiskey while you're out there spending the college money.
We could do that kind of shopping.
Yeah, it really is, and it's
It's a couple's experience.
she's getting a TV, and she's big into horse racing, so she's going to have probably the races on all the time. Also, thank you to Melissa Harm. Oh, don't I always jump over this guy. Poor John. Old Pro Roofing, John Williams, 817-734-2756, our local outfit. They're in Old Town, so John will come out and check out your roof and tell you the straight story. If you need repairs, he'll tell you. If you don't, he'll tell you. So you don't have to worry about getting upsold and all that other business. So 817-734-2756. Thank you, John. Now we get to Melissa Harmon, Texas Farm Bureau, 682-804-0534. I definitely would have your insurance checked out. She told us in the last networking group, I'm in a networking group with several of these people, that the rates in Texas are going to start rising pretty significantly. So you need to make sure you're covered, and Texas Farm Bureau is the place to do it. Also, thank you to Stop Restoration, Lisa and Morris Smith. If you have water damage, fire damage, biohazards, mold, they can handle it all. They're certified mold specialists, which is not common. People say, "Oh yeah, we handle mold." No, they're certified by the state, which you have to be able to say that. And so they're very, very good at what they do. I get a lot of good compliments about them. I don't know about any other nonprofit things going on, except I know you got one coming up pretty soon, but Bianca's going to spend a lot of time talking about that next week. We also have the Little Red Schoolhouse going on for Harvest House.
Yep.
So you want to make sure you want to participate in that, because I could tell you as a teacher, I saw a lot of kids, particularly at the elementary ages, that got their school supplies from Harvest House and Little Red Schoolhouse. And that's been going on a long time. Where do we start? Most of y'all that's listened to the show have heard Lisa talk about the center and how it got started and whatever else. How did y'all come across it, ladies?
We were actually moving to Alvarado, and I was trying to find a church that had a special needs ministry involved, and they happened to be located in a church, and it took me right to them. And so I found it as the center, not as a church, but I found it looking for a church. And
Which church is this, by the way?
It was in the Crowley
First Baptist.
Okay.
at the time.
And yourself, Lisa?
I actually knew a friend who was involved with the Center for ASD. She worked there. One of her kiddos was a participant at the time, and so she said, you need to go check this place out. And I met Lisa for the first time at a Buffalo Wild Wings event, and
I get around.
Buffalo Wild Wings.
a fundraiser. They were doing like a percentage, and so I checked it out and loved it.
Well,
The rest is history.
and yes, and it's been growing and growing and growing. And I've, like I said earlier, I've heard a lot of great compliments about it. Now, most of the conversation y'all should have, because I'll probably just drop in every now and then with a question or observation. But I can't, honestly, it's hard for me to put myself in y'all's position, because to me personally, the hardest thing has to be when you first found out how much radically your dreams and goals and ambitions for your children changed.
Yeah.
So when did you first?
When we first, Tucker, long story short,
We can take all
took
your time
us
you
5
want.
years
Long story short for Ange.
Okay.
for me to conceive. And then he was born 2.5 months early, and he was 2.5 pounds, and he was very, very sick. So we came out of the hospital already like behind in a way. But then all the doctors, his pediatrician just kept saying, "Oh, he's a boy. He's just a boy. They do things later. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." And being a first-time mom,
Right.
I'm listening to the doctors, and so then we just kind of started noticing, like, we could stand behind him. You could scream his name. He would not turn around. It's like you were not in the room with him. And different things like that. We took him for testing, and they wouldn't diagnose him at the time because he was 3. And
They didn't
I say back
diagnose
then
till
they
they were
didn't
like 5 or
diagnose that
6.
young. So he finally ended up getting diagnosed when he was 4. So I'm not sure, like, we started out behind, sick in the hospital, getting lots of medications and lots of things. So, but we always knew that there was something a little bit different. But for a long time, we just believed because he was so young and he was a boy, he just wasn't developing as fast as everybody else would. And then he finally got his diagnosis when he was 4.
And for you?
I'd say our story is pretty similar to that. We also took a while to conceive, and he's our first, he's our only, and so he was just behind in so many things growing up. And so, like, he didn't crawl until he was almost 1, he didn't walk until he was 2, and then the speech kind of was separated from that also. And we also, like, we just didn't know. We were just young, and I mean, we weren't that young, but we were young in parenting. And so we had that same friend who directed us to the center, said, hey, she was brave enough to have that incredibly tough conversation of, hey, maybe this is something that you should look into. It's not just always, he'll do it when he's ready. He'll do it when he's ready. That's part of it, but there also may be some reason why he's not ready yet.
And for us, Gabe presented as typical for the first year and a half of his life. And then making loud noises. Like, I remember one day I got these little toy cymbals and I sat right behind him on his bed and I clanked them as hard as I could behind his head, and he never flinched. He never flinched. And I yelled at my husband to tell him to come into the bedroom. And I'm like, I think he's deaf. I think he lost his hearing. And kept taking him to the doctor. And the doctor kept saying, he's a boy, he's a boy, he's a boy. So what's frustrating is that all these times, we lost precious months that we could have been helping our kids if the doctors would have listened to us.
What could the doctors have done if the first time you took him in there and he said, you may have a problem? What could the doctor have done?
They could have referred us to one of the first places that we went to was Cook's Therapy Center, and they could have started speech, or they could have started OT, or they could have started other things. And I'm not sure what difference that would have made, but at least it would have given us as parents a little bit of peace of mind, because we thought we were going crazy. Like, why doesn't anybody believe us?
Right. Well, I'm going to read Shandy's experience. She wrote about 3 paragraphs. I may just read them in separate parts of the show. I'll read the first one. And this is our friend Shandy Stocksdale. My son Griffin was diagnosed with ASD at age 10. By the way, is that a late age to be diagnosed?
I mean, it just seems like, no, not really, not anymore.
I didn't think so
I
either,
met
but
somebody
I don't know.
yesterday who got diagnosed when they were 32.
Oh, by the way, Sarah Carlson says good morning.
Hi, Sarah.
She is a very, very big supporter of y'all's.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start again. My son Griffin was diagnosed with ASD at the age of 10. We had our suspicions for a while. He was antisocial except for those he was most comfortable, mostly adults. He rarely made eye contact, even as a small child. When asked if he had friends, he could not relate to what that meant, and he could not remember anyone's names, even if they had been in his class for several years. He used descriptors of personality or physical identifiers to describe people. He made noises constantly. I know now he was stimming. What does that mean for the rest of us?
Self-regulating. So they're doing what they can to stay in the situation that they're in, and they may count, they may Gabe paces.
Tucker paces. He has a spoon he throws, but for me, with the way that I look at it and understand that with Tucker is stimming, doing those things is his way to get back in control of himself in the world that's out of control around him.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. He also had a lot of quirks with food, texture, and clothing, all sensory sensitivities. Griffin's diagnosis of ASD was actually the easiest of his many others because it was easier to work with for us. I have experience with ASD kids as I grew up with a nonverbal ASD boy in the 1980s. Now, she goes on to talk about the emotional impact of it, and I'm going to save that for when we talk about that more personally, but you talk about stimming. That caught my attention. Sarah says Gage, rather. I'm sorry, not Gabe. Gage rubs his hands together on his pants. That's his stem, and they change over time as well.
Yeah.
But Gage is an interesting case in a sense because I told before the show he's making 5 on AP exams, and so what people's idea of what autism is much different and much broader. The true autistic spectrum is much broader than what maybe we were taught up, you brought up with younger days, whatever. So as far as this is kind of a hard question. When they told you your sons were autistic, how did that hit you?
I told the neurologist that was not what they came there for and tried to walk out. And my husband told me I had to go back. I think once I sat in it for just a minute, it was hard for me for a while because I felt guilty for feeling like I was mourning something that I had planned. Like the whole everything we were going to do, we had this all planned out before we ever had him. And so I was in a period of a time of feeling sad about it and feeling sad because I felt sad about it. It took me a while to realize it's okay to mourn what you planned for and then move into what you are going to do. There are all kinds of great things, but it was a mournful period for me a little bit. I was very sad.
I'd say it kind of ebbs and flows, in the moment.
Yeah,
still. Yeah. We've had a morning, but I'd say in that moment, I actually kind of felt relief, just because it was an answer to all these just kind of questions that we had. And I guess selfishly, it was a little bit of I'm not just screwing this kid up. I'm not just not doing things right. That there is a reason behind all these delays. And so it gave me stuff to read. It gave me stuff to research and kind of try to figure out. So I'd say in the moment, it was a bit of relief. And then after that, it kind of crashed. It's that moment of, when you have a baby and you're just like, oh, I don't ever want them to grow up and leave the house and get married. And then on the flip side of this, you look at it like, oh my gosh, what if he never can?
Right, that's where we are.
Live in his home?
We have guardianship now and stuff. He's just not. Those just aren't things we're going to do.
Right, and so
But
you
yours
get to
is
that
19,
point.
right?
He's 19.
And your
Yes,
son's
he's
10.
10.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So we're far,
Yeah, so we're
Still a
still on
lifetime.
that trying to figure everything out, but it goes from that immediate change as a parent, so I never want them to grow up, to oh my gosh, all I want is for him to grow up and be able to get married and live his own life, and that just might not happen.
I have a good friend. I also have her permission to talk about a story. A good friend of mine, dear friend of mine, I talked with many years, and when her grandson was diagnosed, she said she cried for 3 days because it wasn't just. She was sad not just for what lay ahead for her grandson, but the things that they had all hoped for him is now going to be changed dramatically.
Well, it changes you as a person and as a family and as a family unit. And, it spreads more than just who lives in your house. It spreads to the grandparents. It spreads to the cousins. It spreads to your church family. And it is something that, I think it's one of the most frustrating things is I talked to somebody a long time ago, and she sat around and she talked about, her child having autism. And she was like, yeah, it's great. We do this, and this, and it's great. And sunshine and flowers. And I'm like, is it really sunshine and flowers all the time for you? Because I can tell you, I make it sunshine. I try to live in sunshine and flowers, but it's not like that all the time. Even though Gabe is now 17, I still mourn. The goal is not to sit in that mourning. The goal is to be able to get up and keep going. And, but like Felicia said, you want them to grow up, but you also want to keep them so close so you can keep them safe.
Well, you mentioned guilt about mourning. Why are you feeling guilty? I mean, because
It's our fault.
Because I felt too like I should, for this child I prayed, we worked, I I shouldn't feel bad that it's not going to be what I wanted it to be. You know, I should just be so happy in this
just be
moment.
happy in the
I shouldn't
blessing.
have. I
Right.
shouldn't feel bad about it. And I think it kind of goes up and down too. Throughout his whole life, as you know, we have like great big strides, and that's a big celebratory moment, and then we have a big setback, or we realize like we're doing this with my cousin's kids, and we're never going to do this.
Like, you
and
feel
so
like
then
you're-
it comes back in, and then I feel bad about feeling bad again.
Like, you feel like he's making big strides, and you're celebrating Tucker for a minute, and
But
then
it's just not
next thing
ever
you know,
what everybody else is doing.
Next thing you know, you see him like, for some reason, there's a social media post, or you get a phone call, or you get a text that these kids are graduating and they're going on to college, and then you just feel sad again. So it's a sadness that I don't think ever. I don't know if it's ever going to go away. Like, and I'm just being honest, because I mean, you feel it's a crappy feeling to feel like I'm constantly feeling crappy about, you know, did I do this to my kid? Because I went through my first major battle with anxiety and depression when Gabe was a baby. Did I not touch him enough? Did I not love him enough? Did I cause this to happen?
Well, how it's a genetic thing, isn't it not? I mean, it's not. Is that something?
It's not proven.
Okay, I just thought it was maybe something. I don't know much about this, but I thought it was something that was, you know, inherent.
Yeah,
it
it's-
wasn't caused by maybe an accident or caused by neglect or something like that. He was born autistic.
Yeah, I think that's just a feeling that comes up too, because when you look back back in the day when it was first being diagnosed and stuff, they were saying it's because mothers were not affectionate enough with their children. And so that just a little piece of that sticks in your head somewhere, you know.
Is that how you feel, Felicia?
Well, it's just kind of, I'm just thinking, I'm a processor of information,
Okay.
but I was actually just texting with Ange this morning, and just like that, I'm also a crier, so
That's fine. No, please feel free.
I'm just like, we're at that point. He's 10 years old, and we're kind of in between. He's kind of past that baby toddler, and we're trying to figure out like where he's headed in life. And, you know, like I live by the promise that, you know, my son was fearfully and wonderfully made, and God has great plans for him. And I believe that wholeheartedly. But sometimes I am just tired of pretending like it's sunshine and rainbows all the time. Sometimes you wake up and you got mess to clean, and you're late because it's everything. It's so much. Things that you say should not be part of your life when your son is 10 years old is still just a regular part of your life. And it is hard. It's hard to always act like it's good. It's just autism. We got this.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just sucks.
Sometimes we don't got it.
And then that leads us to feeling like, and we get perceived as we just want to be alone. Like, we don't want to go places. We don't want to go to people's parties. We don't want to go to celebrations, because it's easier for us to isolate ourselves in our house with our kid. It takes the stress off, you know, and we're mentally exhausted already from living life on the daily. But then, you know, people are like, oh, well, they don't trust us, or, oh, they don't want to come over. Oh, but no, you don't understand. I had to make phone calls to friends and be like, can you please put your bucket of ashes up in your backyard when we come over? Because Gabe would get in their ashes. Gabe loved the touch, the feel of the ashes, and he would get in it and rub it all over himself. And then, you know, and that's embarrassing to be at a house full of people who don't know our situation, and Gabe wants to play in the ashes.
This comes running out, just covered in soot like Santa.
Well, Shandy has comments on that. Continue her message here. It was more our shift that needed attention. When you have a child, you dream big for them. Those dreams tend to be dreams of mastering the neurotypical world we live in. Having a neurodivergent child demands a shift in expectations. It creates grief and guilt simultaneously. As parents, we love our children unconditionally. The diagnosis does not diminish the love. It just reminds us that we have little control over life. The more you want to control the environment for an ASD child, the more stress you are prone to experience. It is a balancing act, creating a safe space for you and your child, and also pushing them to stretch themselves so that they can one day function in a world that will forever be foreign. Griffin works at the Burleson Library, so he has a high level of functionality, if that's the word. But you also mentioned just a minute ago about steps forward, successes. What does that look like when your sons have a success, moving forward, that kind of thing? What are we talking about?
That's a lot.
something
That's a
big.
loaded
Yeah.
question.
Oh, okay.
Only because it changes. And so like success for me is success for Gabe. Gabe wants a job at AMC and he wants to live on his own. But he also knows that I need to be at his place at 11 and 5 to cut his pizzas. He also knows that he doesn't want the coworkers talking to him all at one time because he knows that it confuses him. So success for Gabe, according to Gabe, looks different than me. Like I want Gabe to feel happy and successful, but I want him to have a realistic view. We went and got his ID the other day. I felt super successful about that, and because it was it's stressful. Like but these are things that we have to do because like they're not going to get Tucker and Gabe aren't going to get their license. You got to get their ID, then you got to file for Social Security when they turn 18. Then you got to get guardianship. So my success for Gabe is for him to live semi-independently and work someplace part-time where he wants to work at AMC because he wants to have friends because he doesn't see any of us, including y'all, as his friends. And he wants people to throw him a birthday party in the break room at AMC with his friends. And he wants it to be the best time ever. And I'm like, and how do you tell your kid that that's not true? That's not, but yet as a mom, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to tell all those employees, please have a birthday party for my child.
Right.
Because you want them to be happy. And if that is all that's going to make Gabe happy, I want to create that for him.
How about y'all?
I'd say my success for Declan right now is I really need him to read, and I really need him to be able to write. Those are just two, I think, the biggest hurdles right now, keeping him away from some of his, goals. His goals for himself right now is he's saving money to buy a car. I'm talking dollars at a time.
Right.
And so that he can drive to the center and drive to Miss Heather's class at 16, apparently. He knows that he's not going to drive until he's, 16 to 18, but he's still going to drive to Miss Heather's class.
Which is the class he's in now.
Yes. And park there and drive himself home and maybe stop at McDonald's on the way,
I love it.
Big time stuff.
See, my guy, he doesn't really want, I say doesn't want to do things, I don't mean that ugly, but he has super high anxiety. Which tends to trigger mine also. But he is very, very anxious. So he doesn't ever want to leave me. He doesn't ever want to drive a car. He doesn't want to do those things. He also doesn't want you to change the batteries in his remote because they should stay the same they've always been. Even if they don't work, they're precious and they're his. So my goals for him is to socialize him more, to have him more socialized and capable of controlling his emotions better, so that when I leave him, I can leave him. I say it sounds ugly, but I'm his mom, so I can leave him better than I found him for whoever's coming behind me, whether it's one of my brothers or wherever he goes. I have to leave an adult child to them that will not entirely disrupt their lives. Now I'm going to cry.
Okay.
With their families, so that's, I don't like to use the word burden because he is not a burden to me, certainly, but to leave that on somebody else who's young or just starting their family, that's kind of hard to reconcile.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lisa's talked about that, about Gabe's brothers, about, it's not a burden, right, but it is an obligation, maybe.
Right.
It is, yeah. And when you look at someone who has their own family and their own,
people.
They've got a kid, they're going to get to college and do all of that. And how
they
much
want to plan vacations. And to know just what goes into any of us taking a vacation, it's a lot. It's, we want to, but it's work. It's work and it's stressful. It's me calling ahead saying, do y'all have DVD players? Do you have chicken strips? Do they have seasoning on them? Do you have, we have to because to prepare their space, like Shandy was saying, to help make it a safe environment for them makes it stressful on us because we're constantly making it safe.
That's
Sarah
why we've
has
gone
it.
to the same
Sorry.
place for 6 years.
Well, Sarah has a good comment. She says, one of the hardest parts of autism for me is the societal expectations. When people hear that my child can make a 5 on an AP test or that he made 100 on his college algebra final, they would never believe that he can't tie shoelaces or ride a bike. And we don't know if he'll be able to drive. We think if someone can do something hard, they must be a very capable person across the board. And our version of autism creates some very weird gaps in ability. And the guilt I deal with as an autism mom is that every time we have a victory, I can help but think of the things we haven't mastered yet because of autism.
That's good.
That's a
Preach, Sarah.
very good, Sarah.
Well, she's very well written, very articulate.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, I guess that's the deal, is that when I talk to my friends that have children on the spectrum, you know, and they talk about how they have all these accommodating practices. I mean, going out to dinner isn't just like get in the car and go, right?
No.
You know, it's a planning.
Like we've gone out to dinner before and we've all had to call ahead to make sure that they had the proper food or take Declan's food in or Gabe's food in and to make sure. And then automatically, like you want to go on the defense. Like, you know, is the waitress going to cop attitude when she sees me get out his box of food? Because don't cop attitude, lady, because I'm ready to mama bear
always
you.
ready to fight.
Yeah, we've gotten told to go home before that we couldn't bring outside food in, but
And it sucks because
my
you want
guy's
that
like,
family dinner.
Right.
auditory is everything is very loud for him, so we can't go to a restaurant that's playing music or which
They all
most of
do.
them do, but he can, like when the door opens and closes to the kitchen, he can hear it every single time, and it just wears him smooth out.
Yeah.
Well, where do y'all go for these things? I mean, where do you go to? You go out to restaurants? I mean, I know that the people that own restaurants, our place, and people like that probably go out of their way to accommodate, but there's only so much they can do, right?
They do. Like we like to go to our place because we can sit in the outside area that no matter what the weather is, it's always nice in there. So there's a little more freedom to be a little bit louder or maybe say a few inappropriate things, you know, out in public. I literally had to tell my child, if anybody else can relate, we don't cuss at the dentist. We had a full conversation about that the other day. So
Yeah.
I mean, and you have, like, he's 19.
he's 19.
He's
Yeah.
19.
He says he's practicing because he's an adult.
Gabe just turned 17. His big thing was, I'm 17, I can watch rated R movies now. Okay, but, you know.
I can't do that in my house. Well, I
But
can
you still have to, you know, create those boundaries. But yet he sees that his 18-year-old brother, the boundaries are, you know, we don't have to create those boundaries for Nate because Nate automatically acknowledges them. Gabe does not acknowledge his boundaries.
You sent us some other talking points, so to speak, here.
I just didn't want to catch you off guard.
No. I thought about, and several of these I thought about this. Here's one I did like more than others, I suppose. What do you think is a grand misconception about kids with autism? I guess Sarah addressed that to some degree.
Yeah.
But what is it when you tell people you have an autistic son or they encounter your autistic son for the first time? What are the misconceptions you have to deal with?
They think they're not capable of things. Like all of our kids can, you know, it started, you know, like you said, from a long time ago, people had this one idea of what autism looked like. And now it's so broad that all of our kids here can take directions. And like Gabe can multi-step directions better than my husband and my other boys can, you know? It's just,
I'd say like so often people have this picture of somebody with autism being like somebody sitting in the corner, separated from everybody, maybe rocking headphones, and where that can often be the case. They can also, like my Declan is super social. He loves to just get in and make friends, and everybody's his friend, and he's going to go talk to everybody. And so, I mean, that's not necessarily the case for Tucker and for Gabe. But people will see Declan and I think sometimes think that like, it's just not bad for us because he's not in a corner by himself, that he is kind of out there. But at the same time where he's in those circles, like a lot of those kids can't understand him. And he gets frustrated and
it hurts his feelings.
Yeah.
Are they intentionally or unintentionally cruel to him?
I don't know. I'd say it's hit or miss. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. One of my stories that I told with Lisa for the center probably 4 years ago now was him being at Chick-fil-A and kids not wanting to play with him or like hiding from him because he couldn't speak to them. And so like that was hard. But like, so now we go to Chick-fil-A and he will talk to everybody. But the other day we went and he had to come out and have me come in because they didn't understand what he was saying. And he was telling me, I'm telling them my name is Declan and they don't know what I'm saying. And so he has words, but he has a pronounced stutter. And so I don't know. I think some kids maybe want to understand. Some are just mean on purpose, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, y'all got both your boys got education at the center. Okay, y'all didn't go through the public school system. Was that a choice because the schools are just not able to do what y'all need, or what? What was the choice behind that?
Well, we did go to elementary in the public school system and had a great experience. When we moved to Seguin and moved back here, we were faced with him going into middle school into like one of the oldest middle schools. My mom went there. There was no updates. I didn't know anybody in that school. And so it was kind of like, do we go back in to something so different and we're already different going into it, or do we see what we can do? And I tried to homeschool for about a year and I was just terrible at it. So I was so happy when I found somebody who was not terrible at it. So that's how we came there. We made it through elementary.
A little closer to the mic.
Oh, made it through elementary. We had a good experience in elementary though.
yeah, we were going to homeschool. That was our plan when we became pregnant, was that we were going to homeschool. And then I just realized I just wasn't going to be able to give him kind of that extra level of teaching that he was going to need with his autism diagnosis. And so we found the center before he was school aged. So he was just almost 3. And so they were kind of starting a day program and it just kind of fit for us. And so he's just always been there.
Well, the center has done that for a lot of kids. So how did the community at the center change your situation? It's more than just the learning and whatnot. It's the community itself. How did that change your situation?
For us, like I said, moving back and homeschooling, we were kind of at that point where we were just on our own with Tucker, and so then to find the center, I found friends for myself. Tucker wants friends, but he really wants them to just be the typical kids he went to elementary school with. That is, those are still his friends in his mind. He hasn't seen them in years. But for me, it gave me a group of adults, like somebody to talk to. I feel like going through elementary, like we had a good experience, but I never found my audience because my PTA friends were like complaining, one girl is upset because she didn't make it to the GT program and her sister did. And I thought, well, we just wiped poop all over the walls today, so I don't really care about your GT program. And so I think I found my audience, people who were like, yeah, I get it,
Yeah. That's it. I mean,
you found someone who finds joy in the things that you find joy in and help you get through the things that aren't so joyous because you realize you're really not alone.
Right. And when you have friends that you can text and say either, I'm just tired of pretending like it's okay. Or you can also text and say, hey, my kids said this really appropriate sentence today. And like, they're cheering for you because they understand that it's a big deal. So, I mean, like the education, the ratio for Declan is great, but more important for me is just the community of moms.
And dads. Our dads have formed a pretty good community together too.
But y'all are the primary caregivers because your husband's probably working, right, and whatnot. But, Shandy has to finish off that because we were talking about this right before the show about you were mentioning how more children are being diagnosed.
1 in 36.
Right. And in my era, I don't even know if, for somebody to be diagnosed autistic, they'd have to be manifesting some very obvious symptoms, so to speak. I mean, but now the spectrum is broadened to some degree. She says One must also realize that ASD is a huge spectrum, and even those kids considered similar on the surface can actually be very different. As parents, we could find comfort when being supported by other parents of ASD children, but that comfort can only take us so far. The individuality of this specific diagnosis is isolating in so many ways. Parents can easily feel overwhelmed. Being the caregiver, the advocate, while also needing to challenge their children is exhausting. Every front seems to be a battle. I would urge those on the outside looking in not to assume what ASD is and is not. Instead, speak to every parent if you are hearing of ASD for the first time, allow them to tell you what it looks like in their world. Doing this will go a long way in supporting ASD families.
Yes.
Yeah. So, do you have other children besides these your sons?
I have two older. I have two stepchildren, but they've been with me since they were 1 and 5.
Right.
And so I have a 27 and a 30, almost 31-year-old. So they're grown and
Right. But they,
moved out and stuff.
well, I just was wondering how, we've talked with Lisa about how her brothers relate, or Gabe's brothers, rather.
Right.
Gabe's brothers relate to Gabe. Do you have other children?
No, it's just Declan.
Okay. Well, so, that's also something for them to learn too, isn't it? I mean,
That's the thing. The way, Shandy said, like, I consider these two ladies some of my closest friends. And we can talk about things, but there are still things that we don't get about each other.
Right.
That our kids are so separate. And I think that was the biggest thing. And that's why, talking today, bringing that awareness, like Sarah said, your kid can make a 5 on an AP exam, but can't tie his shoes. And I think that kind of goes for all of us. Our kid has something that they're spectacular at, but can't do the basic thing, like Gabe can't cut his own pizza for lunch, The spectrum is so wide. The need is growing so much. And we just have to educate people, but that there is a middle group. Like, you have the kids that, aren't as independent as some of our kids are. And that's one of the things that I try to remind myself, because I feel guilty again thinking, I don't have it as bad as somebody else, or I don't have it. But no, just because they have, that doesn't minimize our hard.
It's just a different hard.
It is. And I think that's where we feel guilty sometimes, because people have that perception. Oh, they don't have that hard. Wait, don't judge you don't know that every time Gabe sees a counselor, every time he goes to volunteer at Harvest House, or every time he does something positive, it's because, like Shandy said, I'm encouraging him to get out of the house and to do it. I'm encouraging him
And
to
to take all of the steps to make sure that it
all those steps
happens.
are because we put them in place.
Right.
It's not because they are choosing it, unless they're choosing to. Gabe wants to make videos on his iPad, or Declan wants to put a train together the size of the length of his house.
Yeah, he does.
It's just, people need to understand that there's a whole population of people that we can go in the public. Our kids can go in public. Our kids can talk. Our kids can do things, but yet they still have such deficits that are so wearing on us as families. And with the statistics, how much that they're growing, everybody's going to be impacted by it soon, if they're not already.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that has been heavy on my heart, is just like this idea that, and I think I was talking to you about it, Lisa, not too long ago, but just like, our kids are here, like our kids are coming, like they are making their way out into the world. And honestly, they have just as much of a right to take space in this world as anybody else. And so where we do what we can to prepare them, like the world also just needs to prepare themselves, because, Tucker has just as much of a right to take a space in an environment and be the way that Tucker is, without mama having to go in behind and apologize for everything in advance. Because you just shouldn't have to live like that on a daily basis. And so we shouldn't have to go everywhere apologizing for our kids before they get there.
Yeah, I feel like I live my life on an apology tour most of the time.
Right. But, they just have as much of a right to be in a place and take up that space. And so we're educating and we're preparing. It's like this double edge of educating the public and preparing and trying to help our kids.
And I think that's what we laugh about it at the center, because we're like, oh my God, we broke the kids, because we give them this opportunity. They go out and they volunteer at Russell Farm, and they're getting ready, to do some things with wings. And they, we take Jeremiah's and Burleson. We have the whole Jeremiah's
I don't know what that is.
the ice
cream.
Italian
Okay.
ice, yeah.
Okay.
We've made a great relationship with them, and they expect us, and we go there, and we're teaching our kids how to exchange money. So now the kids are like, what's next? Where are we going next?
Where are we going?
It's like, oh, we've been there 10 times. What's next? I'm like, wait a minute. We got to figure that out. But the fact that the community, we see the community starting to open up to us, but it's because we're pushing those doors open. We're having to walk in. It takes an individual walking in and having a conversation about it. It's not because people are like closing their door to us on purpose. It's because they're not aware.
Right.
And bringing awareness is also exhausting.
Oh, and yes, I can only imagine, because you probably have to do that every day.
Yeah.
Every time you meet somebody new or somewhat acquainted with, you have to do it all over again. I can imagine that just wears you out. That, like Sarah talks about it, she says, some days autism just sucks day, and that's, she just, because I talk with her some and visit with her quite a bit and her family, and it's, some days are better than others. And, and it's those good days you
Mostly
look for.
keeps quiet.
Yeah, but it's,
He's a firecracker.
well,
So is Tucker.
Right.
so they, it's also important to know, it sounds like these boys have unique personalities. They're, very different in not, there's not like one stereotype of an autistic child.
Right.
They're autistic in different ways, it sounds like. I mean, I'm just getting in on the fly education
Right.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you've met one person with autism,
all
you've
you've
met
met. That's
one
all you've
person
met.
with autism. You've met one. And I think
Right.
everybody's different.
Towards the end of my career at BHS, they started doing more training for us non-special ed teachers about autism on the spectrum, because it said it manifests itself in so many different ways. Now, you mentioned earlier 1 in 36 children are diagnosed. Is it because, do you really believe, do you believe it's because autism is on the rise, or are we just diagnosing it better and earlier than we did before?
I believe it's both.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's both. But the thing, like you were saying, there's this whole space, and now, so, you have your quirky kid, and then you have, your individuals that are less independent. And my Gabe, where a lot of the individuals that we serve at the center, they're very aware that they're different.
That was a question I was going to ask as well. Do your boys understand this about themselves, or?
Tucker thinks that he is totally fine and there is something going on with everybody else in the world.
Well, it sounds like
But
a lot
he
of
is
kids I know.
he's on the right track as far as he's
Well,
concerned.
that's not a bad attitude to take, though, actually. But go
Gabe
ahead.
is not.
Gabe is very-
I'm sorry. Gabe is very aware, and so we're going through counseling right now and scratching the surface about him even being able to say the word autism without getting upset or talking about it, because he does not want to have autism. He wants to be normal, in his words. And no matter how many times I tell him, Bubba, normal doesn't, nobody's normal. We all have things. But after his last session, he came out and he was like, wouldn't the world be great if it didn't have special needs individuals? And I was like, no, it would be so boring. And everybody would think the same, and everybody would like the same things. And, it's people that have a different way of thinking that bring us fun and songs and light and joy and everything. But and for that, and I've had this conversation, with Deanna, and, her son is not aware of his differences. And Gabe is very aware, and it's you have a broken heart all the same, but I can't help Gabe. I can't help him besides continue to have him see the counselor, continue for him to, but I can't help him be what he sees as wrong with him. I can't help him fix that. And that I feel like is the hardest part of what we're going through right now.
I know I've struggled a lot, probably from the time he was diagnosed. Like, at what point do you have that conversation? Will I just know it's just going to be right for me to talk to him about it? Is he going to come home and say, like this happened, and I think it just kind of happened organically through coming to the center for us. But I thought about that a lot. Like, what does this conversation look like? How do you talk to your child and say, you are not, it's okay, but you're not like everybody else.
Right. So, and that's the thing, but he doesn't realize, Gabe doesn't realize like who has autism and who doesn't. He just knows he doesn't want to have it, you know, because it's like, Gabe, why do people with autism bother you? And he said, because they're dumb. But he doesn't understand that conception because, or what he's saying, because I know he doesn't think that about Tucker and about Declan and about, it's just something that he picked up from somewhere. And now he feels like this isn't me and I want nothing to do with it. But yet also he knows that he still needs me to cut his pizza at 11 and 5.
Yeah, there was probably a stretch of time where I didn't even want to say autism in front of Declan, just because I felt like I didn't want to like just talk about it. Like I didn't want him to feel like he was different. And so does he know that he has autism? No, like we've not sat down and had that conversation. But again, he's only 10. But I mean, he definitely knows that like he sounds different from other people. But like the center is not like anything different. Yeah. It's just school. Like anybody else goes to school. Yeah. And so like he doesn't know that other kids go to school and have like 20 kids in their class where he only has 3. You know,
like 30 kids. It's 30.
Right? Yeah. Well, I skipped all of that. So
my hope is that people hear this show, you know, either on Facebook, YouTube, all the other platforms most people know of, and they contact the center. What will you two ladies say about the center and how it's changed and helped with y'all situations?
You want me to go first so you can process? Okay. For me, you know, I'd say creating friends and like a family group, a chosen family group also through there. Having somewhere for me, I would never take Tucker anywhere and leave him. Like my mom is like it. And being able to take him to the center and leave him there and know that he's going to be okay when I get back, that he's going to be loved while I'm gone, that if he does something wrong, I know that someone there is teaching him with love how to behave in a different way, how to phrase whatever he said better. I know that when I'm leaving him, I'm leaving with someone who I believe loves him as much as I do until I can get back to him. And that's a big deal because I mean, sometimes you just can't even go to the grocery store and take a shower. So I think that is a big relief for me. It does my heart good to know I'm leaving him with someone who I know loves him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge thing. It's huge to be able to, you know, I can take him to school and not have to worry about bullying or not have to worry about just him kind of being part of a class and not getting anything from it. I know that with it being 1 on 3 or 4 or whatever the case may be, it's never more than like a teacher with 6 individuals. And so he's going to get the attention and he's going to get what he needs to be able to learn in a way that he can grasp it, if that makes sense. And so if he needs to stand up while they're teaching, like that's okay, or he can pace and he can jump. And so whatever it's going to be that he needs to do to learn is what that environment allows for him. And so that's a huge deal on top of just having a support system of other moms that get it, you know?
Wow. Well, we're coming to the end. What I'd like to do is have you tell us about your boys. What you want the people to know, what the listeners to know. Tell us about your sons.
I can go first. Tucker is a grump. I will not lie to any of you out there, but underneath his grumpiness and his fussiness, he has a great big heart, and he's really a very, very funny, very sweet kid. I say I have entertainment forever. And just that he may not always act like he wants to be with you, but he does. So just give him a chance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'd say my Declan is a darling. He just wants friends. he just wants to be with people. He wants to talk to you about everything. He has a servant's heart. He loves to just give back. He likes to, he's just started serving at church, and he likes to open the door and welcome people. And he is just a funny, funny kid. He is growing so funny over his last few years. But he has an analytical mind, and he just wants friends.
My Gabe's the same way. He just wants friends, real friends, that aren't friends that mom has made for him, because he does not acknowledge those people as friends. He wants to live. He wants to have his space, and I just need people to welcome him into their space and help create his way instead of it always being me, because we can only do so much.
Well, some of your friends have posted Kelly Rodriguez Andrus, Marissa Geary, and some dude named Brad. Old Brad.
Hey, Brad.
Your love of your life, huh? Is that it?
Yeah.
Sweet, sweet Brad.
Well, that's good. Oh, and Gloria Rodriguez has something to say. I grieve for my adult uncle in his 60s now who never had a chance to experience anything other than isolation. Unfortunately, misinformation and lack of resources were not available for my grandparents, and they passed on, leaving him to the mercy of my mom and my aunts and uncles. So sorry, there's a lot of glare on the screen. So the work and resilience you ladies demonstrate is admirable and respected. I pray each of you drawing strength and courage from our Father in heaven.
Thanks, Lord.
Thank you, Gloria.
Yeah, y'all, it's inspirational to have y'all on the show today, because I know it's 24/7, 365. There are no days off, and I hope and pray that this show gets out there to the people who could use it and who get some attention. You do have things coming up at the center, which Bianca is going to talk about next week, but you can mention briefly here
So
too.
we are, our golf tournament is coming up on September 28th, and we have also Hunters Heroes in Joshua ISD. They started an organization several years ago because of Hunter, and their varsity game on August 24th is going to support the center. They're going to be selling T-shirts and all kinds of
Is
fun
that
things.
right?
Yeah, so we're super excited about that.
Good for Joshua. That's much to their credit.
Yeah, North Texas Giving Day is coming up.
Yes, you're there, aren't you?
Yeah.
I got you scheduled on the 21st.
And I think that's the thing. I think, the fundraisers and everything, I wanted to do this show, and thank you for coming on and letting us come on. But I wanted to do this show because, yes, we have all these fundraisers coming up, but it's very important to me that people hear why. Everything is affordable. Our big vision is to have homes, and right now you can live in one for $4,000 a month. How are we supposed to live with our spouses, with our husbands, and our future happen when we're having to pay $4,000 a month to our kids? So help us make our dreams come true.
Well, I hope this show helps. It's been an emotional show, and for me as well. And I pray to God that He gives you the strength and the blessings and the financial wherewithal to take care of everything that y'all need. Y'all are a blessing to this community and a blessing to so many families, and we thank you for that.
Thank you.
On Thursday, I talked to another group that's working for Children's Advocacy Center. Yeah, this is why I like this job. I mean, I can yell about Joe Biden all I want somewhere else, but I can do all these other these kind of things. And it's much to my honor and privilege. And I thank y'all for coming.
Taylor, cutting us off. Okay.
Yeah, well, he's got things to do.
As soon as he starts talking about next week or the next show, I turn it up a little bit.
All right, like I said, Bianca will be on next Tuesday, and she'll tell us more of the details.
Yeah.
Thank y'all, ladies, very much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
That's good.